to zero themselves in on the real issue. Now,
Yeah.
the at the end of the day, um, I really think that these anomalies in the case, the witnesses never came forward and they never have been named,
Right.
and the story was never dropped in the paper. These are all telltale signs that the government doesn't
Mm.
want you to know what's going on. And
Right.
it's classic disinformation going on where there was a lot of people who made comments about the fact that this object supposedly just boomed straight up out of sight. Well, who said that?
Right. Right.
That's what I've been answering them all with. Who said that?
That's
Because
well, precisely. That's what I this you wrote obviously wrote the same answer as me because what we can only go on is the photograph. Okay, there might be a report and there might be witnesses who saw it, but I don't know, and we've got no evidence that it moved at all because there's only one picture. It would be great. Supposedly there's half a dozen. If only we had two, then we could see we could see apparent motion. But yeah, to focus on it zoomed up into the sky. Well,
that's my
really?
point.
We don't know.
Where's the other 5 images that would show that
Right.
that UFO was sitting still while the plane was moving around? Okay,
Right. Right.
the testimony we've been given has been given to us by the MOD, not by
Right.
the witnesses. We have never had the freedom to
Right.
interview those witnesses ourselves, go back and
No.
interview them again, compare those responses, compare those answers to find out any details in the in between the lines. Um,
Right.
so that part of that story is null in my opinion. But the
Hmm.
fact that their names are going to be withheld till 2076,
Right. Right.
that whole shit never flies with me. The
Right.
president's brain and all this information is going to be locked away for 75 years until
Right.
everybody
Right.
involved is dead and gone.
Right. That's the
And
idea.
their kids are on their way to you know,
Right.
the funeral home. That just screams. It screams government guilt. It just
Right.
screams military cover up. And so that just fuels the fire for me that it was a UAP, that it was not. I mean, not an alien vehicle, but it indeed is
Right.
an
Right.
unidentified object. It's more like a UFO than a UAP. There's no phenomenon to it,
Right.
um, anomalous to it, other than we don't. Most people don't know what it is. And I'm all for secrecy. There's most
Sure.
of the people in this country, not speaking for yours or anyone else's, but I wouldn't want them knowing any of our secrets either.
Right.
Um, but it was a fantastic video. And
Well,
I
as
think
John
that,
said, a lot of the government freedom of information hides behind commercial licenses and patents of private contractors,
private
and
sector, yeah.
and as I kind of said, that was the scam, really. For a government not to give away secrets. Oh, it's a patent held by Marconi or whoever, and they don't have to tell you the truth.
That's right. That's right.
Right.
And love them or hate them, Colonel Philip Corso was the one who really kind of brought that notion to light in the public ufology circles over here
Oh
in the
yeah.
United States, especially with his story of having a file cabinet in his office sent to him from General Trudeau, his boss. With all this UFO technology and files and all this back work in it.
Right.
That they just handed it off to the private sector and let them go with it. So they would
Right.
have to handle all the security measures. They would get the funding and they would get all the support they needed, and the government would reap all the benefits. And Howard Hughes and so many others are evidence of it. But to get to this show, moving forward to the program that we just aired for all of you tonight, we began in the Pacific. The Nimitz Carrier Strike Group was on maneuvers off the coast of Southern California, San Diego, out there, 30 miles or so. And they were there for several days, and the radar operator of the Princeton, with whom John Burroughs broke that witness on radio for the first time in history.
Yeah.
Chief Petty Officer Kevin Day
Right.
on Phenomenon Radio, on the original Phenomenon Radio show, and that interview was very compelling to hear what this man had to say. He was the chief radar officer, of the strike group. And, most people don't understand that, the radars on aircraft carriers, they're not really meant to reach out a super great distance. They're for flying planes and taking off planes and the immediate area around them. That radar on the Princeton, man, could reach way out.
Right.
And he testified to us, not testified, but he commented to us and told us his testimony on the radio show that he saw these objects for days way out there on the perimeter of their reach that were just sitting there. They weren't doing anything threatening. They weren't doing anything aversive or, like they was doing nothing radical or anything like that. And if it doesn't present an immediate threat to the strike group, they don't worry about it. They're out there in maneuvers and training, and they're doing their thing. And as long as the airspace that they're working in is clear, they don't have to worry about it. Until he presented to, to some higher ups that he thought they needed to be looked at. And that's when they sent David Fravor and another plane out to go take a look and see what these things were. Now, guys, here's where I want to get your opinion. Now, Fravor was the first FA-18 on the scene with one of these objects. And he's the one who called back to the strike group that he was engaged. And he said that on the interview on Phenomenon Radio with Linda Moulton Howe and John Burroughs. He said that because I remember him asking him, like, why did you say you were being engaged? And he was like, because of these radical maneuvers this thing was doing around my plane. Like, it literally like barrel rolled right over my plane. Like, and he was like, it was an evasive maneuver in the front of us. And so I diagnosed that as being engaged. And so it made these radical maneuvers, and then it descended down to the surface of the water. And then he did a corkscrew maneuver to go down, keeping an eye on it while his planes turned, and just followed it down to where it was. Now, my question is that one that was submitted by our viewers to all of us about, is it possible for the U.S. military to engage its own strike group? John, I'm going to lead off with you on this one. Do you think it's possible that the U.S. military, some agency in the military complex, could be testing something that it has on the Nimitz strike group out there in the Pacific without them knowing about it?
Well, let's start with this. Go back in history and look at how many times I shouldn't say advanced weaponry like we're dealing with now, but just different weapon systems and different things that they've tested on soldiers and different stuff that, came out declassified years later. Just, you can go back to just the nuclear weapons testing that they did on soldiers up in the desert in Vegas, the Vegas area, where they were out there and they were exposed to the radiation. So, yeah. And also what makes sense, if you look at the Nimitz, first of all, that was the first time the new sensors had been upgraded, the radars, the sensors, and they were also flying with the new helmet. It's obviously advanced since then, but it was the new helmet that could has more control with the pilot and stuff. So you had that going on with the fact that you had the new equipment that was being tested in the area. That also happened off the East Coast too. I don't remember what aircraft carrier group it was before they deployed, but that was another upgrade of equipment, and you were in training areas. So when Faber said he engaged, he didn't engage the way they normally would. He engaged without weapons because they weren't armed. But you would not want, if you were testing equipment, and this would be the defense contractors, not the Navy itself, you would want to not have the pilots know what they were doing, how they would react to the equipment, what they would do, and everything else, and how they would respond. One of the things that I caught interesting off this latest UFO flap was I believe, I don't know what his rank was, but we'll just call him, he was a Navy pilot, Graves, that was involved in one of the incidents, said the F-18 is not equipped to handle this type of technology. So they're clearly pushing, his group is pushing for more advanced technology other than fighter planes. But at the end of the day, if, for example, which everybody conveniently overlooked, even though in one aspect ufology says, well, pilots are the best trained to identify this stuff, when one of the videos said that there was a fleet of drones, no one wanted to acknowledge that. They wanted to poo-poo that and say, well, they must be mistaken. But ultimately, if you're trying to test equipment and see how our equipment reacts, which the Americans and the British have the best radars and advanced equipment that are being built in the world, maybe next to China, you'd have to test it on our own equipment to see how it works.
Right.
What about you, James?
Well, I agree with pretty much everything John said, because it's obviously things that we've discussed amongst ourselves for a while now.
Forever.
Yeah, but yeah, I don't doubt what he said, but I do wonder about the circumstances surrounding these incidents. I really do. If everything was so straightforward, then things wouldn't be as confused as they seem to be. And that rings a bell straight away. If there's too many questions that need answering, but obviously we can't really answer them, because if anything, as we said, was being conducted there, that would be in private hands, and there's no way of actually being able to verify that, unless if we get a whistleblower. So the best thing we can do is maybe look at what is out there, and is there anything that we have that could produce anything that they may have seen. For instance, the gimbal footage. I've been looking at that for as much as everyone else has, But again, with me, when I look at the actual movement of the craft itself, that does, and when they really highlight this glow around it, it does suggest to me that there's some kind of plasma actuators giving off what they call a glow of plasma, which is helping whatever's in between just literally do that and fly against the wind. Because this thing is, they've been testing it for years, on the wings of airplanes and everything like that. But I've now got some documentation showing that there is potentially a reason on why this thing could potentially do that at the time. And the paper that I've got comes from 2003 at the moment. But again, I need to dig deeper into that now. But I just need to make sure that what we're being told the truth, basically.
Some kind of harmonic balancing.
Can I add to that for a second, Ray?
You got your girlfriend there with you, John?
It's my cat. She seems to be
Me too.
A hound.
She's wanting to be on the. She's wanting to get on TV.
Yeah, but anyway, getting to my point, a couple things stand out. Okay, first of all, those videos that were released are grainy. They're hard to read, right?
Yeah,
the Calvin picture was grainy. It's hard to read, so you can't get the full picture. That was, I think, done by attention, purposely. Then you also have the fact that through investigations, people got Kevin Day to admit that the radars that on the Princeton could be manipulated with countermeasures, so that the radar itself could be manipulated to see something that's not going on, or some of the things they said, the speed that was taking place, the radar picked it up as this. Well, countermeasures can cause some of that. Faber admitted that the helmet was being utilized at that point when I asked him point blank. And so you have the concept, too, of military people that have to be careful what they say or bring up, because that radar system being able to be manipulated is most likely not something they want to admit or talk very much about. Never mind a new helmet and all this new technology.
And if you don't mind me saying, the spooking of radars isn't anything new. They've been trying to spook radar for numbers of years to confuse you. So it's nothing new. It's just advanced in what it wants to do and what it needs to.
But maybe they're doing it themselves. I mean, Catalina Island and the other part of that military operational area is the biggest Navy defense simulation, and almost all radar systems, radar rooms inside, and aircraft can be switched over to training, and objects and radar points can be injected into the radar. You know, imagine it's 3 o'clock in the morning and you're tracking an inbound flight from Honolulu to San Diego. You're pretty bored, and then somebody switches off on the simulator, and all these UAPs, and you have to treat it like real. It's fantastic psychological training, and that's what they do. Is it real? But they did see something with their eyeballs and with forward-looking infrared radar. Here's the possible thing that I'm really focusing on is real optical simulation. Laser-induced plasma countermeasures. I mean, I'm sure F-18 pilots in the Navy fly up in a simulation to a height to intercept something on their radar screen which is only on their radar screen. Wouldn't it be wonderful if they flew up and there's a glowing thing? And, oh, hang on, the glowing thing can defy the laws of physics and move faster than a real airplane. Because it's not an airplane. I don't know. It's a possibility.
And when we get close to it, it may affect the equipment on the aircraft itself.
Well, it goes even deeper than that, guys. When I did a radio show with Kevin Day one time, he was talking about how it could be our technology, and he said, let's say it was, he said, then if the pilots would have been armed, which they weren't because of the training exercise, he said there's a possibility they felt threatened enough they may have launched a missile at it. And he said if that missile, if it would have been a countermeasure, it would have missed it, which, oh, by the way, that goes back to time dilation. And the missile would have been active, seeking out another target to include the airplane that actually launched it could be that target. And